Today we will be talking about the specimen preparation for transmission electron microscopy. Uh, it has been written electron microscopes, but we are focusing today on the transmission electron microscope sample preparation. And in the past, I used to distribute topics among the students, and they used to prepare those presentations, right? And that was a very successful way, because through that they not only used to learn about the microscopy and study books, the relevant books, but they will also be getting training of how to present things, right? So that is also a good practice, and if we had time, then I will distribute some topics among you, and you will prepare your talks about these. So that will be a nice training and experience for you. But I'm not sure we will have that much time or not. So this was basically Uzair, Dr. Uzair, when he was my student. So he contributed to this talk. That is why I have included his name as well. The TEM sample preparation, its importance is that books have been written on it. Because when you achieved very high magnification using the electron wavelength and enhance the resolution of the viewing devices or instruments and machines, the first problem was how to make electron transparent sample. Electron transparent means it should be less than 20 nanometer thick. So taking a material to that much fine thickness was in itself a huge problem. It was a big problem, that how can we decrease the thickness up to that level so that the electron beam can pass through these. And in words, it is an easy thing, but when you are sitting in front of the microscope and your sample is not electron transparent, you can't do anything, because when the electrons are not transmitting through the sample, how can you do the transmission electron microscopy? Because your whole game, your whole science is there through the transmission of the electron beam through the sample. And when no transmission occurs, then there is no information on the image screen, on the viewing screen. So that was a huge problem, and it took decades to perfect some methods, to devise methods to go to that much thickness of the sample which would be electron transparent. So books have been written upon these. And I now don't remember the names, but the supervisor of my supervisor was among the first generation of those electron microscopies, and he had written a very huge book on thin films, that how to make thin films for electron microscopes, and then he had prepared those and then studied them and given the book name was probably the electron microscopy of thin films, right? So there are many books which have been written, and nowadays in market, that book, the top one, was published by the Springers, and this one is available on Amazon, right? So there are many books on sample preparation of transmission electron microscope. No electron microscopy without proper sample preparation, and sample preparation is an art or skill. It has very little to do with your knowledge. It is your experience, your skill, that how can you prepare excellent sample in the required duration, right? So the people who are experienced, they can make more sample, and their sample will be more informative, right? About what you are finding, you are looking for in a sample. And if a person is not very experienced, then they will prepare the sample, they will take them to the microscope and they will see nothing. Because 20 nanometer is a very critical thickness. If it is slightly thicker, then the sample is of no use. Thirdly, when you thin down the sample beyond a certain limit, it automatically breaks down. If you cross that limit, then the sample is not self-sustainable and it will break into pieces and fall in the machine or before that. So, ultra fine thinness is also not required, and slightly above the desired thickness is also not required. So it is a critical thing, and experience tells you which sample can be the best and which method should be the best for electron microscope sample preparation. It needs proper knowledge and experience. Uh, an inexperienced person can take more than a month on the preparation of a sample. And a well experienced person who knows about the softness or hardness of the material he is making sample from, who has a guess, an idea that how thin I can go through proper routes. If you grind the sample with emery paper, depending upon the grade of that emery paper, you can decrease, for example, 1 millimeter thickness to 100 micron in a few hours. But if you have a diamond wheel and you put the sample on, you can do the same work in 5 minutes, right? But the diamond wheel, how much your control is, how much you can assist the speed of grinding. For example, if you do it for 10 minutes and you will lose the whole sample. So using a technique depends upon your experience. Then people use silicon carbide powders that you grind the sample, you put it on a metal base and grind the sample with fingers, right? So that is another slower level of grinding the sample. So a diamond wheel can decrease the thickness of, for example, say a medium hardness material, just a journal material, think about it, right? A journal material which is neither so soft nor so hard. The diamond wheel cuts, grinds about 1 millimeter in 5 minutes, right? Then the emery paper and the silicon carbide powder, depending on the grades of the roughness of the emery paper, it may take a few hours or a day to go to that much 1 millimeter thickness. But if you are thinning the same sample with argon ion thinner, where the sample is in the middle and argon ion beam is coming from this direction and this direction, and the sample is rotating, it may take more than a couple of months to thin it to 1 millimeter. So it depends upon your judgment that is your sample suitable for diamond cutting now, diamond wheel, or diamond saw cutting, then how much should be thinned down by silicon carbide powders and how much should be left for the ion beam thinner or a dimpling as well in the middle. The summary is that you cut a piece of sample from, say, a stone. You fix it with some gluing material which is meltable, right? Which can be melted, because when you are separating, removing thin sample from a hard base and it is not melting, then you lost the sample. But when it melts, then you get the fine sample from there. The gluing material must be very hard so that you don't lose, the sample doesn't move on that. And secondly, when you want to remove the sample, you heat it a little bit on the hot plate and it should be finely removable. If it is not removable, then the thin sample will break. So you will always use that particular material. When you have taken it from this cut, then you thin down it to various ways up to 100 micron. When it goes to the 100 micron, then it is suitable for ultrasonic drilling. And that drill, you cut the 3 millimeter disc from the sample. If you have, for example, this is the thick glass, and you fix your sample here, and you took drilled 3 millimeter disc at various positions, and you, for example, need two samples, so make cuts for 5 or 6 samples, because there is a chance that you may lose some of them during the process. So make several cuts and get those discs. Then fix those discs on another glass sheet and then grind them and measure their thickness with the calibrated microscope, optical microscope, and when you reach 100 micrometer thickness, then take it to a Dimpler. So in the middle, it will thin down it to 25 micron, and then that 25 micron for a journal material, as I told you, which is neither too soft nor too hard. It takes 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours in the ion beam thinner. And through this way, you can make usable samples in a reasonable time. Important points to bear in mind are that specimen preparation method you choose depends both on the type of the material and the required information. What sort of information do you need? Obviously, the information you need is crystallography. You will be doing imaging as well as diffraction pattern. So sometimes a thick sample can give you images, but diffraction pattern needs really thin samples, right? By thick sample, I'll say that if you are looking for crystals in a glass, then the glass is transparent, and despite its thickness, the transmission can be absorbed across it. But when you are taking diffraction pattern, then that is not visible through that. So for diffraction pattern, you need really thin sample. And if you are doing chemical analysis of sample, and if I tell you that, for example, this is the sample, and you are doing chemical analysis of this crystal, then this crystal, how much you isolate it is covered by the glass. So when you are taking the ED spectrum, energy dispersive spectroscopes, spectrometry of this material, then you are getting information from both the crystal as well as the glass. And that overlapping, superimposing of peaks confuses the result you get. And for that purpose, if you thin it down so that no overlapping glass is left, then that will be a little bit more useful information. And it will become more useful if this crystal you are interested in occurs here at the edge, which is not covered by the glass. Right? If I brick this is a sample and there is a bricking here. So there is possibility that some of the crystal edges will be out of the glass. So people usually select the edges which are more out of the glassy overlapping. So when you take the problem is that glass is, for example, a silicate glass, and the crystal composition is also comprised of silicates. The glass is, for example, aluminosilicate glass or sodium aluminosilicate glass, and the crystal is aluminosilicate crystal. So the silicon content which you are getting from the crystal is not isolated. The contribution from the glass silicon is also coming there. So if you are expecting, for example, 20% silicon in the crystal, it gives you 30%. So the information is not reliable. And that is why you need to isolate to completely make the edge of the crystal free of any superposition by the glass, the glassy phase, right? So when it is at the edge, then there is a chance that you will get a composition closer to that. But remember, a single technique cannot be trusted. You must support your information by other techniques, the side techniques. If this glass was, for example, sodium, aluminum, silicate, and the sodium is say 2, aluminum was 3, and this is something else, right? Oxygen will be according to the valencies. And this is the glass composition, and Al2, Si2, O5, for example, 4, 8, 3, 2, 6. So how much is it? 8, so it's 7, right? If the crystal composition is this and the glassy composition is this, then for this crystal, if you are taking EDS spectrum from this crystal, then the silicon and aluminum ratio should be 1:1, right? Si2, Al2, Si2. It should be 1:1. But if it is overlapped by the glass, and it, for example, a pair is 2:3, and there is no such phase, then how will you defend your results? And for this purpose, you will have to rely on the other techniques. And the simplest and easiest technique is that you take the sample to the X-ray diffraction and it will show you which phase is forming there. Is it supporting Al2, Al2O2 is Si2 or Al2 Si3? X-ray will tell you that. So the composition cannot be confirmed by the ADS alone. And whenever you describe such results, you don't say that the ADS revealed this percentage and it matched or it is exactly that particular phase. But what you say, the safe statement is that approximate elemental composition detected through EDS or measured through EDS was close to that ratio. was close to that ratio. For example, one was 1.9 and the other was 2.1. So it is close to 1:1 ratio. And as XRD showed, or results revealed the presence of Al2Si2O7 phase. Therefore, the crystals visible under the microscope might be the Al2Si2O7 crystals. This is the way of describing a scientific result.